This past week, I have been working on a project that I believe could impact and influence my life in the most profound way. I created a manifesto. This is not something I would have ever thought to do on my own. And I know that this has the potential to have an incredible amount of influence and impact in my life, because I recall when I was first inspired to create a life plan and a personal mission statement nearly 20 years ago. It was Michael Hyatt who was in his podcast talking about the fact that most people have business plans, but very few business owners have a life plan. And he also, in that same piece of content, was talking about the fact that many businesses have mission statements, but not many people have personal mission statements. When I heard that, I immediately began to research what would a personal mission statement look like, and what would a personal life plan look like. And that set me down a very different trajectory throughout my entire life from that moment forward. I began to walk a path, maybe even clear a path that I would have never gone down had I not heard that podcast episode, had I not been inspired to take immediate action on the insight that came from those statements from Michael Hyatt nearly 20 years ago. And recently, the idea of creating a manifesto came from another friend, peer, and mentor in my life, Rich Litvin. It came from his book, 100K Clients: How to Find Them, Coach Them, and Keep Them. Now, if you've been listening to me for a while, the name Rich Litvin is a name you may have heard me mention countless times. I discovered his book, The Prosperous Coach, back in, I think it was July of 2019. He and his friend and his mentor, Steve Chandler, co-authored this book, The Prosperous Coach, where they lay out and teach what's called the Prosperous Coach method for creating clients. And this book had already transformed my life. It has been responsible for generating well over $1 million in additional revenue from coaching alone that I would have never gone after had I not read this book. And for the first time in my life, in all of my online business efforts, it was an approach to creating clients that was fully aligned with my values and how I want to show up in the world. I began to study, master, integrate, implement everything I could from this book, The Prosperous Coach. I talked about it with everyone I knew who was a coach, and I know for a fact that hundreds of my friends and clients have been convinced to go buy their own copy of this book, and I've coached many of them through it. And as a result of being responsible for so many sales, and the fact that I had reached out to Rich to let him know about the level of influence and impact, had the opportunity to be coached by him, and also to be invited to be a guest to one of his intensives out in California, in San Diego, just before the pandemic. So I've had this ability to take somebody who has written something that has already impacted my life, and within a very short period of time get to a place where we know each other at a pretty decent level. We would be able to recognize each other off the street in an instant, and we would be able to recognize and remember the last few conversations we've had together. This is one of the things that I love about this journey through life, when somebody comes along and they have a message that you're meant to hear that is designed to change the trajectory of your life. And I don't use that as hyperbole. I don't use that as some sort of cliche statement. My life is radically different because of the Prosperous Coach book. Now, I want to talk to you about this book, 100K Clients, and how it came into my life. It was Monday, June 22nd. I remember sitting in the rocking chair on the front porch of our home, and I got a WhatsApp notification. Now, I don't get a lot of WhatsApp notifications. I live here in the States, and WhatsApp is not nearly as popular here as it is in other countries. But I do have several clients from around the world over the years, and so I have WhatsApp installed for messaging with them. And I was shocked to see that this WhatsApp message was from Rich Litvin. Now, he was in the States when we first started connecting, and I know that he had recently moved back to London for a while, and so I guess that's why he switched over to WhatsApp instead of iMessage. But anyway, I get this message via WhatsApp out of the blue, and it's a message from Rich to me that says, "Hey Cliff, I did it. I finally published the book that scares me." And he went on to say that this is not a coach that is for most coaches, and he's not actually going to try to make this a best-selling thing, and he's not looking to promote it like all of our peers tend to do. Instead, he's hoping, his goal is that this book will be much like The Prosperous Coach, that it's still selling 10 years from now. And he basically just said, let me know if you'd like me to send you a physical copy. And of course, he sent a picture of him holding the book. And I'm like, Rich, I would be delighted to receive a gifted physical copy of that book. I actually sent him a video message with my acceptance, and it was the first time that Rich had seen me since I had grown a beard, and we had some good dialogue back and forth with one another. But anyway, as soon as I knew this book was coming, I immediately went and got the audiobook version because I didn't want to wait a couple of days. I already know the level of which Rich Litvin's teachings have had impact and influence in my life. It's not just the Prosperous Coach book, but his 3-day intensive or 2-day intensive that I went to in San Diego. I came back with like 10, 15 pages worth of notes in my Evernote note at the time. And it took me months to get through all of those and implement and integrate into my life. And there have been a number of online programs that he's done where you pay, I don't know, $1,500, $3,500, whatever the cost was for these webinars, where he does 3 90-minute sessions and you come in and participate. You take it all. I mean, there's all I can say. Every single time I've invested my time, my effort, and any other form of energy into working with what Rich Litvin is sharing, it has always returned massive impact and influence in the way that I experience life in a profound way. So I knew that I was not going to wait until this physical book came in. In fact, I also knew that I was very unlikely to read the physical copy. So and because I prefer reading on my e-reader device for a number of reasons. But anyway, I went and got the Audible version. I went and got the Kindle version, paid for both of those myself, and immediately got to work. Now, it has been 3 weeks. And I'm going to tell you that I am currently, when I get back to the book tomorrow, I will be on chapter 16. And each of these chapters, the first 15 chapters, there is one chapter that is literally 1 page. That is it. And the average is somewhere between 3 to 5 pages. if I had to guess. I did not go in and count. The audiobook in 1x speed is like 2 to 5 minutes per chapter. It is that short. And yet I've been working on this book since I first got that message on June 22nd. 3 weeks, and I've just made it to chapter 16. And I'll explain why. Chapter 2 is titled, Would You Bet $100,000 on Yourself Right Now? And there are a couple of quotes from that chapter. He first said that I did not write this book to inform you. I wrote it to transform you. Another quote from that chapter, this is a $100,000 coaching experience, an experience that requires your full engagement and commitment to action. And then all of the next part here is one quote in chapter 2. He says, imagine investing $100,000 in a coach. That is a serious commitment. How much attention would you pay in your coaching sessions? How deeply would you reflect on the questions asked? How rapidly would you take action on the insights you received? And then he says, my clients pay $100,000 or more for just 2 30-minute coaching sessions each month. They come prepared. They're hungry for transformation. What if you approached this book with the same intensity? What if you treated these pages as containing $100,000 worth of value? Now, there are 50 chapters in this book. Now, that, by the way, that quote is not in there. But he says this, how would you engage with this book if you invested $2,000 in each chapter before reading it? Now, I will tell you that is exactly what I am doing with this book. I likely would have done that had he not written what he did in chapter 2. In fact, that whole thing there was not in the Prosperous Coach that I can recall. But I will say that that is exactly how I approached the Prosperous Coach. That's exactly how I approached the 10-day audio program from Creating Lasting Change with Tony Robbins. That's exactly how I approached Tony Robbins' Personal Power 2 program, which is a 31-day program, actually technically 28-day program. But anyway, I digress. It's exactly how I approached everything I learned from Unleash the Power Within, the 3 different times I went to that event from Tony Robbins, and it's exactly how I approached everything I learned from Date with Destiny from Tony Robbins. So I am no stranger to taking a teaching resource and going into such depth and treating it as though I just made a $100,000 investment in this material and looking for instant implementation, integration, everything. So that is exactly why it has taken me 3 weeks to get to chapter 16. However, I will say that it actually only took me 2 weeks to get to chapter 15. And it has taken me an entire week to process chapter 15. You see, chapter 15 is only 3 pages long. Super fast to read. And then if you flip over the page, there's a paragraph, if you will, explaining the exercise that he suggests. And this chapter invited me to write a manifesto. Now, I will say this. I've heard of manifestos before. I don't know that I have ever read anyone else's manifesto before. I've heard I've heard people, associated with notoriety and or, for good or bad, I guess. And it's like, and they had this manifesto, or we read this manifesto, they left a line behind this manifesto, whatever. I've never really thought about what a manifesto is. Not until I read chapter 15 of 100K Clients by Rich Litvin. Now, he says a manifesto transcends typical goal setting. It's your personal constitution, capturing the essence of who you're becoming. When you read it daily, it transforms abstract aspirations into tangible reality. He says that a powerful manifesto addresses these 5 dimensions: character, your core identity and self-worth; well-being, your physical vitality; relationships, your connections with others; wealth, your financial sovereignty; and spirit, your source of ultimate meaning and purpose, what powers you when everything else falls away. And then on the next page, he says, here's my personal manifesto. It's a dynamic, evolving declaration that I work on regularly, and I read it out loud every day. It has been sharpening my journey for nearly 15 years. And then he goes on to share his manifesto. Now, I read this 3-page chapter, and I flipped over the page and read the nearly 1-paragraph explanation of the exercise. And I have devoted approximately 1 hour per day, every day, for the past 7 days, creating my own manifesto. And what this process has revealed to me is there is a significant difference between setting goals and understanding your identity, or the difference between having a productive life or having a life that is lived as devotion. It has taken something that has been so forefront in my own consciousness lately, and that is being intentional about choosing what receives my focus. In fact, one of the things that came out of this is the practice that I've been doing as of late, the past several months, of daily logging, journaling, and doing daily reflections. I've talked about this several times in the Cliff Ravenscraft Show with using my Plod Note Pro and how I'm doing daily logs all day, every day, throughout the day. And at the end of the day, I take the transcript of that and get this amazing reflection back that helps me identify patterns and blind spots, and also just reminds me of all of the things that I've accomplished today and what are the other overall themes of the day. What are the wins of the day? What are some things to carry forward into the next day as I process? Who am I becoming through this process of experiencing life? It's such an amazing journey that I've been on. And one of the things that's come out of this is how much I am in love with how disciplined I've been in the process of remaining faithful to waking up at 4 a.m. every Monday through Friday and devoting those first few hours of the day to protect my solitude. And before I allow the world access to my consciousness, I am setting the tone of my day. It has been amazing. And the manifesto has taught me something. Actually, it's not taught me. I already knew the lessons of the importance of the language we use and what do those words mean to us, and what feeling do they evoke inside of us. But the manifesto is an exercise. It is a process that allows me to be even more intentional with that language that I choose. Now, I have used affirmations for the longest time. I'm a huge fan of affirmations. I believe that a lot of people out there fail to benefit from affirmations for a number of reasons, and that's not what I'm going to go into here today. But let's just say this. I'm a huge fan of affirmations. And in some ways, the manifesto is like a string of affirmations. So it's kind of like that. But it is something a little bit more unique. I think there's a quote in here. It's at the end, he says, remember, a manifesto is a living document. As you grow and evolve, so too should your manifesto. Revisit it, revise it regularly to ensure it continues to guide you on your soul road. I love that. Anyway, this process has been amazing. Now, one of the things I will say is going through and creating this manifesto has been life-changing when it comes to using and being aided by AI. Now, I'm still a user every day of ChatGPT. And what I want to share with you is the actual prompt that I gave to ChatGPT to help me come up with my manifesto. And I will read that to you here. Okay, here is the prompt. I want to create a personal manifesto. Please act as a deep thinking partner, coach, strategist, spiritual mirror, and skilled language architect. Do not simply help me write a nice sounding list of affirmations. Help me uncover the identity, commitments, principles, and practices that I actually want to live from. Context. I recently listened to a chapter from Rich Litvin's 100K Clients book where he described a personal manifesto as a living declaration of who you are becoming. It is not merely goal setting, wishful thinking, or manifestation language. It is a daily compass that helps a person make conscious moment-by-moment choices based on the life they are committed to living. Rich suggests that a powerful manifesto touches 5 dimensions. Number 1, character, my core identity, self-worth, values, and way of being. Number 2, well-being, my physical vitality, energy, health, and relationship with my body. Number 3, relationships, my way of loving, serving, connecting, leading, and being with others. Number 4, wealth, my relationship with money, service, value, creativity, sovereignty, and generosity. Number 5, spirit, my source of ultimate meaning, presence, truth, consciousness, and purpose. After that part of the prompt, I then gave it my mission statement that I created back in April 2026. I then gave it some important context about my current life and the work that I do. I'm a coach, mentor, speaker, and entrepreneur. My current work is centered around creating rooms where entrepreneurs gain clarity, make better decisions, and build momentum. My core process is, anyway, I go in and I give it more about what I do. I also said that I'm in a season of reclaiming deep focus, protected morning solitude, spiritual alignment, and devoted time. I'm learning to protect the first few hours of my day from inboxes and all the outside distractions of the world. And then I shared some things that resonate deeply with me. And then after I shared all of the context, I said this: please guide me through the creation of this manifesto slowly and conversationally. Do not draft the final manifesto immediately. Ask me one question at a time. After each answer, reflect back what you hear, identify any patterns or tensions, and then ask the next question. Help me explore each of the 5 dimensions: character, well-being, relationships, wealth, and spirit. And also help me identify what I'm no longer available for. What am I protecting? What am I devoted to? What kind of man, husband, father, coach, creator, and spiritual being am I becoming? What daily practices reinforce that identity? What language feels alive, true, powerful, and current? What old language or inherited identity may need to be released? What commitments I want to make without turning them into pressure or performance? What declarations I would actually want to read aloud? Please challenge me when my language is vague, inflated, performative, inherited, or disconnected from lived experience. Please help me make this manifesto specific, grounded, alive, and deeply true. Begin by asking me the first question only. And oh my goodness, did ChatGPT and I have some of the most profound ongoing conversations. Like I said, I devoted 1 hour on average every day for the last 7 days, and I finally came up with a final draft of my very first ever manifesto. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I will read certain sections. Here is the first section that I will read. I live consciously. I begin my day before the world has access to me. I meditate, reflect, and focus within. I align with the deepest truth of who I am before I step into the roles I am here to live, love, and lead through. I move through the day with chosen attention. I remain aware of the state I am living from. I choose my desired outcomes. I allow clarity and insight to come. I turn clarity and insight into committed, calendared action. I give that action protected focus. I receive feedback from what happens, and I allow feedback to reveal the next aligned step. That was the first section. The next section I'll read from. I love others from presence. I do not confuse love with immediate availability. I do not let every request interrupt my devotion. I remain open-hearted and discerning. When I am present with another person, I listen deeply. I see beneath the surface. I reflect dignity, possibility, and truth. I love without rescuing, and I challenge without diminishing. I serve without abandoning myself. Here is another section. Stephanie, by the way, is my wife. I love Stephanie through presence, service, affection, and partnership, not as a strategy to receive something in return. I love my children while honoring their path. I serve my friends, clients, and community without turning them into future transactions. I make invitations without attachment, and I honor people beyond their response to me. Money is a clean exchange of energy for value created. I give real value, and I receive cleanly. A single insight, decision, or aligned next step can create extraordinary value. And I price my work in alignment with the seriousness of that transformation, not the number of minutes on the calendar. I serve generously within clear agreements. I create meaningful transformation without abandoning my rhythm, scope, or sovereignty. I make clear offers and allow people to choose. I do not personalize another person's no, and I trust people to discern their own yes or no. I respect each person's financial reality without shrinking the value of my work. I offer without pressure, receive without friction, and release without resentment. And then the final section that I'll read from my manifesto is this. When I drift, I do not turn awareness into accusation. I receive feedback with grace and return to the next aligned step. Every return strengthens the man I am becoming. I am prepared to meet this day with awareness, presence, peace, and conscious living. I do not need ideal circumstances to remain aligned. This is how I navigate the day. This is how I live from the truth of who I am. And this is how I become the man I have chosen to be. All of this, and that's just portions of my manifesto, but all of this came out of 7 hours devoted to one exercise from a single chapter in a book that was only 3 pages long. This to me is the level of devotion that I love to give to resources that have the depth necessary to impact my life in a meaningful way. And before I wrap up, and by the way, well, I'll put a link to where you can get Rich's book if you want to get it for yourself. It's called 100K Clients, How to Find Them, Coach Them, and Keep Them by Rich Litvin. I'll put links in the show notes. But here's my invitation to you. Have you been intentional about what you believe, about who you are? And are you consciously deciding the narrative of what you say about yourself to yourself and to others, about who you are as a person, as a spouse, as a parent, as a friend, as a leader, as a business owner, whatever role you have in this world? Have you consciously chosen the narrative of what you tell yourself and what you tell others about who you are and what you're here to do on this earth? Have you chosen intentionally what you are devoted to? And have you sat down and asked yourself, what is it that is so important to me that deserves protection from all of the distraction in the world? And what would you want to remember about who you are when external evidence is temporarily absent? These are the kinds of things that I love working with people who are on the entrepreneurial journey, getting very serious about what is it that is my desired outcome? Why is it that what I want? Why is it important to me right now at this moment in my life? And where am I currently stuck? What obstacles in my way? What decision am I facing? What am I currently hovering over that has me stuck in this moment? Whatever that case may be. I love having conversations that brings about clarity and insight. And as soon as that insight arrives, there's something incredibly powerful about assigning calendared action that is, I'm going to commit myself to doing this. I'm going to put it on the calendar. I'm going to choose the day. I'm going to choose the hours. I am going to commit right here and right now that I will protect my focus during that block of time. And you know what? If you're new to this, it could take you a little while. You may get some feedback that shows that, wow, I seem to be prone to distraction when I set aside blocks of time to do these things and I don't get around to doing it. That's okay. Feedback is always going to give you valuable lessons that will help you become more of the person you say that you desire to be. This is what I love helping people with, and it is exactly why I chose to create a brand new version of the Next Level Mastermind called Next Level Mastermind Momentum. I've been facilitating paid mastermind groups since 2012. And I can tell you right now, this next new season of my life, facilitating mastermind groups for those on the entrepreneurial journey, I'm about ready to enter, I think, what is going to be my greatest work to date, bringing about transformation, helping people take their insight and information and turn it into committed action. And then, rather than trying to figure out everything all at once, just what's the clarity I need to get the next aligned step. You don't need to figure out the entire map of every twist and turn that's ahead of you. You don't know what's ahead of you, but you do know where you are right now. And it's easy to get clarity if you're willing to just figure out what is the next aligned step. And then the question is, are you committed to it? Will you make the commitment? Will you take that? Will you put it on the calendar? Will you protect your focus? This is what I'm doing with the folks who join Next Level Mastermind Momentum. It is the most accessible, and I believe will be the most transformative mastermind/group coaching experience I've ever done. And if you would like some more momentum in your life, I encourage you to head over to cliffravenscraft.com/momentum. Read about this program. I'm just go. The link is in the show notes as well. If it resonates with you, then it's meant for you. And if it doesn't, it's not a big deal. I look forward to hearing from you if you are someone that is looking for more momentum in your life. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level. Mindset and